Linda Cooper, and welcome to the New 100 Longevity Campaign. I'm going to kick the show off today with a few fun longevity facts that I'm pretty sure none of you have ever heard of before. It was a first for me too. It's from a white paper that was put out maybe a decade ago, and it was a combined effort with the WHO, the World Health Organization, the NIA, which is the National Institute of Aging, the NIH, with the National Institute of Health, and the HHS, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And this paper was titled Global Health and Aging. And here's what it said, the Cliff Notes version. And I quote, "The world is on the brink of a demographic milestone. By the year 2050, the population of people 85 years and older are going to triple in size." Yes, triple. So it's kind of like crazy. Also, since the beginning of recorded history, young people have outnumbered 65 years and older demographic, but that whole thing is going to flip-flop as well. And why am I sharing this information with you? I'll tell you why. I am wanting to make everyone aware that we are going to have a much older demographic. Are we ready for a world filled with centenarians? And that's the question that I'm going to be asking today's guest, and I'm so excited to have him on the show. He's Dr. Kevin Perreault. He has a laundry list of impressive titles because he is one of the handful of elite scientists who are playing a direct impact on curing age-related diseases. And he has been, for the past 20 years plus, been trying to change the way the world views aging. And not a whole lot has really changed. So I'm thrilled that he's with us today and not exhausted from his efforts, but not for lack of trying. But I do feel that everyone is like in a space right now that are like more open. I'm hoping that they're more open to hearing about these incredible advances being made. So he is, let me go ahead and give you a little 411. He is one of the original co-founders of the SENS Research Foundation, and they developed this organization to be able to pull in the biology of aging and age-related diseases and do the research and cures and have a space for that. He's also the co-founder of Ocean Biotechnologies. He is the president of the Global Health Span Policy. He is the director of the Health Extension Foundation. He's a board fellow with the Buck Institute for the Research of Aging. And most recently, which I'm really excited about this, is he is the founder of Open Cures. And I'm super excited about this company because he's bringing to the mainstream for the first time a way to optimize your health through measuring your biomarkers. And when you measure your biomarkers, you can see if you're predisposed to having cancer or a lot of different age-related diseases, and so it's really amazing. And it also comes with a consultation, so he can help you read your results. But it's for people who are really interested in being the CEO of their own health. And I'm just really excited to get started. So let's welcome Kevin to the show. And I just want to say that the clock is ticking. And if we solve this, we all win. And so let's get started. Hey, Kevin, how are you? Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Linda, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Well, I just finished sharing your laundry list of amazing titles, and so impressive with all the work that you're doing right now. I really want to ask, the obvious question, the elephant in the room. Why do you suppose that people haven't wrapped their heads around changing their views on aging and seeing that there are so many amazing things happening within the current field of the biology of aging? Why do you think they're in denial or skeptical, or what is it?
I don't know if so much if it's denial or skepticism. Well, definitely skepticism is a big part of it because aging has been a problem, that people have said they've been able to solve for thousands of years by selling people all sorts of pseudoscientific quackery. Also, a lot of people don't understand science all that terribly well. So trying to communicate with the more recent breakthroughs, which actually do have science backing, that aging is an approachable challenge has been itself a challenge.
You are one of the original co-founders of the SENS Foundation, whose tagline is to reimagine aging. And that was developed, what, two decades ago? When was that?
Well, not quite 20. 2003 was when I first got started with the life extension community. And before SENS was actually the Methuselah Foundation. So SENS Research Foundation emerged from the Methuselah Foundation, which was the brainchild of Aubrey de Grey and David Goebel. And very shortly after they formed that foundation, which was focusing on prizes actually at the time as incentives to cure aging, I joined them. I was the third basic director of the newly formed foundation, and I started managing the Methuselah Mouse Prize, which was a multi-million-dollar prize provided to scientific teams that were able to help a mouse live past the current world record. And so I volunteered for the Methuselah Foundation, and as time went on, we began actually doing research in labs on different aspects of age-related damage repair. And the SENS Research Foundation emerged from that research because the prizes and the research within the Methuselah Foundation were not necessarily compatible. So SENS Research Foundation emerged from the Methuselah Foundation, and I was a co-founder of that. So when I first went into the lab for my first year, in 2011, there was a gentleman in the lab who had been working for 3 years on rapamycin and mTOR inhibition. And he had done 3 years worth of work, and he had submitted his research for publication. And then it took him only another 3 years to get the work published. So by the time they saw the paper in the journal, it had been 6 years since that discovery had been made. They showed that rapamycin was able to extend healthy lifespan in mice. To this date, they have not done the appropriate trials in humans. They should have been, gloves are off, no holds barred. We're taking this drug into people. It's got a 30-year safety profile. It's been prescribed to people for many, many reasons. And that is what made my mind explode.
It's making my mind explode. And I'm not even in the inner circle like you all are making these, incredible scientific breakthroughs, because the science of aging is accelerating at such a warp speed, but everybody is not, there's nothing implemented. I don't even think that 10, 15, 20 years ago that anyone realized that this was a possibility. This was, possible to cure aging. And so I think that's kind of like, it's this whole full circle. It's everyone outside of the scientific community that has to understand this.
And tell me so that I can understand why this is not, because to my understanding, to your understanding, the average person's understanding, this is stuff on the table that should be moved forward as quickly as possible. And we don't understand why it's so slow.
So I have to share this with you because I wanted to do my due diligence, and I actually reached out to the FDA to have them on the show because I was like, I want to hear about how you're keeping up with the science of aging and what programs that you're implementing, because on their website they do show that they've got a fast track program, they've got a partnership program with different to keep up.
They've approved metformin. They've approved the clinical trial for metformin for the condition of aging. So the FDA is moving in the direction of treating aging as a insurable ICD classified disease, or not necessarily disease, it's just a syndrome or a medical problem. But yeah, what was your findings with them?
Well,
that's interesting.
what happened was they denied my interview, which everyone that I've reached out to has been surprised. Because I'm coming in very naive. I actually, the average person listening to this is going to be saying, That's really odd. I wonder why they wouldn't want to share.
I know, it's that science is political, that it's driven by money. There's all of these different motivations, and the customer is not really connected. So when we have a customer connected to an economic transaction and the customer is not satisfied, there's some negative consequence on the system for non-performance. But right now, people just are sick, they die, and new customers come along. There's no way to actually influence the process. We just get to die, that's it.
Not only do they die, and they're not aware of the fact that there
are options.
Options out.
I know. Yeah, I know. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because it's.
So let's talk about what you're doing. One of the discoveries that I am so excited about sharing is with Ocean Biotechnologies and your senescent cells. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so my PhD thesis was in senescent cells, and I came to understand that they were one of the most important targets. They're pro-inflammatory cells that accumulate in the body, and they destroy the environment, and they accelerate age-related diseases. And they found out that if you could target them in 2012 and remove them, the mice lived longer and they lived healthier. And so that was proof of principle that killing senescent cells and getting rid of them could help health. Now, how do you take that basic discovery and turn it into something for humans? Well, there's a whole bunch of companies now looking at that. But one of the companies that I was involved in co-founding in 2013, along with Matt Schultz and Gary Hudson at the time, we took the ideas of SENS and Research Foundation and Aubrey de Grey and created a suicide switch. We basically took the same switch, the same genetic program that was developed to kill these cells in mice, and we put it in a little lipid nanoparticle that was injectable, and so that you could inject it into a person's circulatory system. The suicide switch would be taken up by all the cells in the body, and only the senescent cells would then become capable of being killed.
And
so
you targeted these senescent cells. How did you find them to begin with? Like, how did you target them?
So senescent cells have a particular characteristic in that they stop dividing. They put brakes on. So when a cell becomes damaged, it basically turns off division. And that switch that they push or pull, depending which way you want to look at it, that turns off cell division, they tied that to a suicide switch. So that when a cell turns off cell division, it also turns on the production of the suicide switch. So that's how they target it.
What they call the zombie cells, because they're like stuck.
Yeah, they're stuck. They just sit there. They're a part of regeneration. So damage signaling from senescent cells is actually part of wound healing. So they're not necessarily horrible. They could be playing very fundamental roles in wound healing and biological processes, but they need to get the heck out of the way when the job is done, because they can't continue to sit there and spew out signals of damage. It's just like inviting contractors over to your house and they never leave. You know, they just keep tearing things apart and putting things together. So we need the senescent cells, the wound healing response. Inflammation needs to go away. After things are healed, the inflammation needs to go away. And senescent cells are sort of like a holdover from a wound healing response gone bad. And they just kind of sit there and they just don't ever go away.
So how do you kill the zombie cells? Is it a pill? Is it an injection? Like, how does it work?
It's a program. It's a genetic program. So it's a little piece of DNA so all of our cells have a suicide pathway that they can self-destruct. So if things start going bad, they'll just turn on the self-destruct program, and they will basically pull themselves apart and turn themselves into food for other cells and to be recycled. So yeah, that's called apoptosis or apoptosis, depending on which way you look at it. But it's a program that's built into every cell in your body.
So I guess my question then is, how is the treatment performed?
Well, so the genetic program is a little piece of DNA. It's enveloped in a tiny little bubble. It's a bubble of fat, basically. And then millions and trillions of these little bubbles of fat with the little program in them get injected into your blood. And those little bubbles of fat go and stick to the cells in your body carried by the bloodstream into the different tissues. And then they fuse, the bubbles fuse with the cell, and they put the program into the cell. Okay. So that then the program gets turned on.
No, it's amazing. So this could be done for osteoarthritis in the knees, to
Yep.
regenerate cartilage. It could
And
regenerate.
not just to kill senescent cells. It's basically a way of getting a genetic program into the cell, and we're just using this mechanism to do something about senescence. So we can actually use this same process to do a lot of things for a lot of different biological processes.
Which is obviously incredible because it's going to cure so many age-related diseases. So the big question is when is this going to become available to the mainstream?
And the standard answer that I have for that is when the mainstream supports it.
Okay, so please define what is needing to occur for the mainstream, for what you feel the mainstream
Funding.
funding. And for them to understand how close you are to this happening as well, because I don't feel that they are aware. I feel, at least I hope.
You're completely correct. People are not aware of the timelines. They don't know about the process, the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 stuff of the FDA. All of these things need to happen when you have a therapy which is not that risky. It shouldn't have to go through 10 years, that a risky therapy. It shouldn't have the same thing. So there are fast track things and there's different ways of doing it. But for something like a gene therapy, it's so new, so cutting edge and so untried, and there could be side effects. And a lot of these companies, even including Ocean, would love to get their technology into millions of people.
Right.
Well, you want to be very careful before, even if you have a small percentage of people having a negative reaction. Yeah, that's why you need to do the trials.
Right.
But you can collect the data more quickly, and the funding needs to be done to do the trials. But I will tell you now that the suicide switches that we've been using, and we've been killing senescent cells in mice, we've been putting them in monkeys, green monkeys, and other primates, and we've been noticing some improvements. There is almost no negative side effects to this. And if, in fact, senescent cells are damaged, but so are cancer cells. So the same suicide switches that kill senescent cells can kill cancer cells. So we actually have started another company called OncoCenix to take this same technology and put it in the context of cancer. And if I had cancer, I would, before I would go and opt for chemo or radiation, give me this, because it was working. I've seen it work. I've seen it kill these cells and tissues. The animals that are being given these therapies, the mice are living longer and they're living healthier, even when you start injecting them when they're already old. So often with science, they have the science and the experiments start treating an animal when it's really, really young. And like even when it's just reached early adulthood often, and sometimes even through development. That is not what we're interested in doing. We're interested in taking older animals and reversing, like you said, reversing that aging process.
Okay, everybody keeps saying the same thing. It's like a broken record, lack of funding and getting it to human trials. And I want to hope that the public just is unaware, and that's why we're doing this. Because if we cure these age-related diseases, with these treatments, we all win. It's a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer. And the funding that we need in order to take, I mean, this therapy was probably available and could have been used in people in 2012 and 2013, especially in a compassionate use case, with people with cancer or who are actually dying, who might have benefited from it. But there is an awful lot of hoops, and if you don't follow those hoops, you can't get the approval from the FDA. And if you don't get approval from the FDA, you're not reimbursable. And then, so everybody who actually invests in a company is very much interested in having a successful product at the end of it that they can actually sell. So you have to follow all of the rules. But at the same time, if more people in the mainstream knew how close these were, there would be more support, there would be more funding, and I think the FDA would probably move a little faster. And it comes with education and awareness, and what you're doing is really critical.
I think it's really critical, and to be honest with you, it's way past due. This gap needed to be filled so long ago. And I mean, I take my hat off to you because I can't imagine that you're not exhausted by this point because you've been spinning your wheels to like get this, shout it from the
I
rooftops.
see, I actually, every time the lights come on in someone's brain, and yeah, it's a celebration. And sometimes, we've seen it go from strength to strength to strength. We've gone from 15 years ago being a completely laughable fantasy about doing anything about aging at all, to having it actually be endorsed by the scientific community, to now being endorsed and followed up on by the investment community. And so where there's smoke, there's fire. And hopefully we can get the public aware that, this is not Kansas anymore.
It's not science fiction. This is actually.
It's not science fiction. This is something that is within reach of people within their lifetimes today. And the only thing stopping us are the inability of humans to work together and cooperate and collaborate because the only real problem we have is death and disease. Mm-hmm. Competing with each other for the scraps of few shekels off the table. I mean, when we die, when we get a disorder, or when we become unhealthy, that's game over, basically. So really, there are a ton of people out there who are aware that health is worth much more than wealth.
First of all, the scientists should not have to become salespeople to try to receive their funding to cure Alzheimer's and cancer and all of these life-threatening diseases we all are suffering from. So I think just wrapping their heads around it to begin with, to understand how close you all are so that they can realize the severity of the issue. And it's broken. We got to fix it.
When you have a happy customer, you get a positive feedback loop. When you have an unhappy customer, you should have a negative feedback loop. And right now, there's no negative feedback for non-performance. So we really need to engage normal
feedback because nobody knows what's going on.
Nobody knows what's going on. So it's complicated.
They want to keep us like that. And for whatever reason, I feel that is going to be the turning point when everyone has that light bulb switch off in their brains as well, and say, stop being so skeptical or scared of the change. This is actually a humongous, the biggest breakthrough
transformation. Yeah, no, it's a transformation. It breaks the glass ceiling of this inevitability of aging being this, biological expiration date that we can't do anything about. And we actually have a lot of control over it. And there's a whole new field of scientific study in human psychology called terror management theory. And look it up on Wikipedia, because it's been around for a while. But basically it just says that people don't want to stare in the face of, death. Basically, death frightens everybody. We don't know what it is that happens to us. It's the unknown. So we're trying to manage our terror of the unknown. And in managing our terror, it's sort of like Stockholm syndrome, where you make a friend out of your captors if you're being kidnapped. Well, we have made a friend out of aging and death because there is no escape. We feel there is no escape. We're hopeless. So we might as well make the best of it and not go insane thinking about why these things happen at all.
That's with some people, but there are others that have more of that mindset to be the CEO of your own optimized health. And I think that those people do their due diligence, do the research, make healthy choices, being their best advocate, and finding ways to be able to anti-age. And I say anti-age meaning reverse the aging process in a multitude of ways. Right. And I'm really excited to share with one of the things that you actually do, which you're actually inside your company right now. It's called Open Cures. So tell us about that.
Well, it all started when I became a cancer survivor, which is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me in retrospect. And I'm sitting in the lab working with samples, studying senescent cells. And I'm taking these samples and I'm putting through equipment that can measure thousands of things, hundreds of thousands of things all at the same time. And they can do all of these measurements. And I'm thinking, well, if I was able to run my sample through this machine before I got cancer, would I have been able to predict that I was going to get this cancer, and would I have been able to do something about it?
Right.
So I looked and I thought, okay, well, I need to find out if I can run my samples in this thing. Can I give a blood sample? It turns out, and again, this is about the FDA and protection of people from exploitation, but it turns out that the system is made to prevent exploitation, and by that prevention of exploitation, it's also preventing people like me, fully informed consent, who know what they're doing, even can they run the machine. It is looked down upon. There are policies against it. So you have to be your own self-advocate, like you were saying. And so I decided I'm going to create the first company in human history where an individual mainstream person can just walk off the street, and they can give me a blood sample. So you don't need a prescription. You don't have to be, constrained by some of those things, because you are your own architect. You are the architect of your health. As long as a person is completely willing and capable of researching their own body, they come to me. They are called self-directed researchers, just like people are self-directed investors, self-directed retirement savings plans, people who are capable of projecting into the future and wanting to manage their health. They need information. They need these types of services. I am my first customer. I created this company for me and my family and the other people, and I want to reconnect the customer with the development of their own cures, which is why it's called Open Cures, because together, if we measure our own health, we can then pool our data together to create missing data resources, which if we wait for biotech and academia to create, will be decades.
We can't wait around anymore. So
no, we're not waiting.
Tell us what Open Cures find through these biomarkers and how the process works.
The assay that we start most people off who don't really know what they should be measuring. Most people just want to know how can I stay healthy? You know, these are the questions. People come in, they've either got a disorder that they want a miracle for. They are wanting to monitor their baselines like me. I want to know whether or not something is changing. And if it changes and it shouldn't, I want to have the heads up. I want an early warning system. And then the other is people who are just, they're already proactive. They're going to the gym. Maybe they're taking supplements. They're eating things, ketogenic diets. They're doing a whole bunch of stuff. Like they want to be proactive. So they don't really know the assays because they're not scientists. So one of the best assays that we recommend for people so that they can get an overall idea of their general health is done using mass spectrometry. So basically you take a drop of blood and you run it through this machine which accelerates all of these particles, all the molecules in the blood, and they all hit the detector at the same time. And all of the hits, all of the impacts of all the molecules are measured. And so you can tell by how hard the molecule hits the detector, how massive it is. And then you can take that mass and you can go, oh, only a particular combination of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens make up that molecule. So you can infer the identity of the molecules that give you insight into different health conditions like breast cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's. Some of these molecules are now associated with these types of health conditions. So we can say this is the information that we can give you, and also your general health.
So you would be able to detect breast cancer, and that's like incredible to me, because actually that really hits home, because a good friend of mine was just diagnosed. So this is before that they have the cancer. You can see that they have the biomarkers to get it.
In some cases, yes. So for colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, and other cancers, we can show that you have an environment in your body that facilitates cancer. It means that if you let the bus go in this direction for too long, it will potentially result in cancer. So for instance, we measure one class of molecules called gastrointestinal tract acids. And those are produced by your microbiome, and they are anti-inflammatory. So if you have low levels of these gastrointestinal tract acids, or GTAs, you have a pro-inflammatory environment. And the clinical studies that have looked at this, people who have high levels have an anti-inflammatory environment, and almost never have colon cancer.
So Alice, like you have like an advisory appointment to read it, because obviously like.
Yeah, totally. So basically, if a person is anywhere in the United States, I can have somebody visit them in their home, take a blood sample, send me the blood, and then I will take it and forward some small part of it to get analyzed. They will return over 300 measurements. Some of them are dealing with the breast cancer measurement, some are Alzheimer's neurodegenerative specific. But after all of those results are in, I usually go over them very, like for about a half an hour to an hour with the person. And then we go through sort of a summary of it. And then we have a workshop where the individual actually sits with other people who are also getting their results. It's like a tea leaf reading almost. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And because
with a lot more benefits.
There was a lot more benefits and actual real stuff. This isn't just a crystal ball.
Right.
So you get to figure out.
Do your biomarkers change over time? Is it something that you need to continually check, like on a yearly basis or a?
It's like, yeah, I call it, yeah, absolutely. So I tell people it's like a smog check. You want to know, because what we're actually measuring are molecules that are involved with the burning of energy, so metabolism. And when you take your car to a smog check, you can find out how the car engine is running. It's kind of the same thing. So over time, if you just leave it alone, obviously things start to deteriorate. But if you're able to get an insight, maybe I'm not eating enough of this, or I'm eating too much of that, or maybe my blueprint, the way things I'm genetically predisposed, just means that I have a little bit of a weakness over here, which I can prop up by eating a little bit more of something else. So it's all about maintaining balance, because our bodies are incredibly dynamic, our biochemistries are very dynamic, and we don't have really right now any insight into what's going on in those at the biochemical level, because you have to actually be sick before a doctor will usually prescribe a diagnostic.
We're currently in a sick care system and not a healthcare system, but how long does it take for the results to come back, and how much does this cost?
Well, I mean, the person acting as a self-directed researcher can pick any assay they want. If they have a particular disorder, I can identify a different assay. But this assay that does 300 biomarkers is $350. There is the cost of the phlebotomy on top of that.
Your designer shoes. It's not even a pair of designer.
Yeah, it really is. It is as a snapshot of your health. It is incomparable in value, because you go from a state of ignorance to a state of knowledge, and we can help you. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help people educate themselves. I am not going to ever be in the position where I'm an authority with a stethoscope and people are looking to me for a yes or no, what should I do? I am not going to do that. People have to be their own director, their own architect. I can help them as much as I can educate themselves, but they are ultimately the final arbiters of the decisions that they make.
I just want to thank you so much for everything that you are doing, because all of it's making an impact, especially this new venture that you're doing with Open Cures. And I, for one, am definitely going to take advantage of this service. I mean, this is a game changer, so thank you.
Well, it certainly is a game changer, and it's supposed to be. It was designed to be so that people like you would be able to educate yourself, and you taking the message that these tools are available, that they even exist, not just that they're available, that they even exist, and that there's this shift is going to do nothing but accelerate the development of these cures, which we all need. So I really appreciate your outreach and what you're doing. It's groundbreaking in and of itself. So congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. I just hope that it makes the impact that we all really need to make this change, because I think everyone just needs to get on board. And I think that once people wrap their heads around this concept and not, be skeptical or scared, and actually see that these are truth tellers and not charlatans, which has been the case in the past, I think that people will start really, really making a huge impact on being part of the change and demanding that they receive these treatments, because it's going to be life-changing.
Thing that I would just emphasize is that we are in charge of how fast these treatments are developed, because without our data, they can't develop them. So if you join Open Cures and anybody else joins Open Cures and we pool our data together, that is the fundamental rock on which all of the biotech, all of the aging interventions is built. And we have control over the speed at which they're doing if we use our data. Let's work together.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. That's it for today. Thank you all for joining us on the New 100 Longevity Campaign. I hope this inspires a longevity mindset in all of you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda. Bye for now.
I'm not backing down, 'cause the future is now. Not backing down, 'cause the future is now.